Sydney Fitzgerald for Rebel News here in downtown Calgary for day 3 of the Global Energy Show. In this report, I speak with Justin Reimer, CEO of Emissions Reduction Alberta. Now, I'll tell you now, we probably don't see eye to eye on some of the necessities here when it comes to the emissions reductions type industry initiatives, but nonetheless, here is his perspective on the situation that Canada finds itself in with regards to a new Prime Minister and the energy industry beckoning for development. So what does that mean to be in charge of emission reductions in Alberta?
Sure. So we are an entity that actually funds technology in the late stages to both reduce emissions and create economic opportunity. We've been around for 16 years now. We're funded from the industrial carbon levy that the Alberta government has had in place since 2007. And over that time, we've invested $1 billion in a variety of technologies that both reduce emissions and create economic opportunity. So things like carbon capture, sequestration, hydrogen development, both production and utilization, long energy storage, battery technology, circular economy, a variety of technologies to improve energy efficiency in our industrial sectors.
Now, obviously there's I'll call it a clash, let's say, between the Alberta government and the federal government, and obviously both of them seem to be in favor of emissions reductions to a certain degree, just perhaps one much more than the other. With the new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, are you noticing a palpable change in the province?
Well, it's been interesting because at Emissions Reduction Alberta, the majority of our funding comes from the provincial industrial carbon levy, but we also receive federal funding to do things like energy incentives. So we actually think we're part of the solution to what both governments are trying to achieve, which is reducing emissions and doing it in a way that promotes economic opportunity. So I think the opportunity looks bright to enable more of that into the future. We've seen a lot of success. Developing clean technology is very hard. It requires de-risking to get those commercialization projects across the finish line, and we've seen a lot of success. Of half the projects that we've funded and have completed, 50% of those have commercialized, which is a big success rate compared to what you see in the venture capital sphere. And we think we have an opportunity to see a lot more clean technology dominance in Alberta that we can export to the rest of the world.
Now, my question for you, there are a lot of critics to the idea of carbon capture and to take on some of these, take on the word sustainable purposes. What would you say to those who simply believe that, capturing carbon, what's the point? If we plants breathe it, we're working backwards in some sense.
Right. So we've actually funded a series of carbon capture sequestration technology pre-feasibility studies over the past several years, and we've learned a lot. So there's no better jurisdiction probably in the world to be doing carbon capture and sequestration because of our geology, because of the policy framework, because of the industrial entities that we have here in the province. And many of those projects that have been developed through the feasibility study are very expensive and costly. And what is required in order to make them economic is a step change in technology and to see more progression in terms of the economics, the policy environment. So some of the projects that have gone forward are projects that actually are able to charge a green premium for their end products. So Air Products, low carbon hydrogen, for instance, or Dow's carbon capture sequestration on the hydrogen side of the equation. They have a lot of opportunities and are seeing those projects move forward to final investment decision. So not all the projects that have been developed are moving ahead right now. The time is not right for them, but they're getting more and more the pencils out and trying to make them more economic over time. And I believe some of them will progress, but not all of them will progress at the pace that was initially envisioned.
And are these predominantly or exclusively projects that are being initiated simply to fight aspects of climate change, or is there some kind of underlying technological benefit that we're reaping an advantage from?
Yeah, so some of them, we have projects now that are capturing carbon to facilitate enhanced oil recovery and enable more oil to be extracted out of mature asset oil fields. So it's creating a bit of an economic return on assets that weren't as effective at producing oil over their mature lifespan. So some of those are proving to be more economic than those that aren't. There is an advantage for some of these companies because of the policy and regulatory environments we have for demonstrating a low carbon footprint and managing those carbon emissions. I think where you're seeing both the province and the federal government go is they're very supportive of these types of developments while enabling the industry. And so I do think there is a competitive advantage for a number of firms, and it's not just in the oil and gas. Cement, natural gas power generation, fertilizer, all of those have opportunities to facilitate some level of carbon capture sequestration, but we're talking several years in terms of its actual deployment and development. These projects are too massive to begin and turn on and off in the span of a couple of years.
And lastly for you, emissions reduction. When it comes to the kinds of energy that we have access to, especially let's go with bitumen, there's a strong argument there that you can't really produce as much of that without drastically increasing emissions. But when you look at an international level, even if that's the case and we start supplying bitumen to the world, we're going to be bringing down global emissions. How much of a factor is that, the global emissions versus the provincial matters that we're doing?
Right. I think it's an important point. I think we're doing a better job recognizing the value of reducing our emissions footprint in Alberta and exporting that valuable resource to the rest of the world. I think of not only bitumen in enabling more reductions, but our natural gas and supplying more natural gas to other parts of the world to enable them to get off coal or other sorts of higher emission reduction technologies. Emission reductions need to be think of in a global context, not just, it doesn't have a provincial boundary. So if we're doing things to support global emission reductions through technology development, that's a good thing, and we should get behind that and support that.
Let me know in the comments what you thought of Mr. Reimer's remarks. In the meantime, for Rebel News, I'm Sidney Fizzard. NoGreenReset.com is where you have to go if you want to see the latest on stories like this, stories that provide a real perspective on the climate alarmism that threatens to destroy our resource economies.